Wednesday the 12th of April, and as you can see there's quite a lot of growth, albeit on a couple of them not as much as I'd like, but plenty of growth on the tubers. It's about now time to take the main batch of cuttings, and what I will do, this was a early batch of Go to Twilight. I should probably take the tops out of those and add them to some cuttings off the tubers. The same with some Marys there, and a few odd giants that are pot tubers that I've left, and I'll just take those so I've got the stock if I'm struggling for badges. But then we have got those there that are rooted. That's probably about 60 there, and there's another couple of 100 there that are already rooted, so they'll come out to be replaced by the new ones. So time to get the job done. That's that job done. I've had to leave the tray of oakwood on the bench just to try and get that extra flush of cuttings off, which I'll probably get in about a week's time. Some of these Marys and plants that are potted up from earlier cuttings, and I'll just cut the top out and I'll just let them reshoot from the one pair of leaves I've left in most cases, and they'll either be spare plants or pot tubers. Shouldn't need them because I've took quite a lot of cuttings already today. So that's the ones that were probably 2 weeks old and are now rooted, as are that tray over there. This is me running out of room in the Vitapod, and I find they root just as well on the open bench with 2 layers of fleece over, and I just wet the fleece down with a sprayer every now and again, and the thinner cuttings do fine on there and they will root. Some of these have rooted on the open bench. I think this tray of Gertler and Marys did, and they're all away and they make a nice plant. So there's 5 trays there, so it's 200, and then another 5 trays in there, so that's about 400 cuttings taken this morning or into this afternoon. I've ejected the trays of tubers that I've finished with. I've got plenty of cuttings of most. There's still a couple like oakwood, and I'm going to just about scrape it with winnow, just about, but I've got all I need really. So there's 400 plus another 260 there, so it's about 660 odd cuttings plus plants. These are mostly Brins and Aggies that are always slow to get going, so it must be around about 700-800. Well, I only need 400, just slightly under, for what I want to grow, so I'll be able to select the better plants from these and then say pot tuber the spares. That's that. Wednesday the 26th of April. It's probably about a week behind where I wanted to be with the potting, but life happens and things move along, so we've just done it. So cuttings that we've potted today, which totals about 300, were ones that were rooted mostly 3 to 4 weeks ago, and the batch that was taken 2 weeks ago, other than a few that I've potted today, will be potted next week. These are outside. You can see I'm getting barricaded in the greenhouse by some manoeuvres at work in the car park, but that'll soon go again. So these out here are just plants that were early plants. Those are some Marys that I've cut the tops out of. There's 18 in there, and if I needed to use them I can, because I've got a couple of shoots there. I've pinched them back, leave the leaves of 2, or just take one off and let it run up as a plant. Some Hallmark and Gertler, again plants that were effectively mother plants. I've had the tops out of them. There's another tray of Marys there, which would have been a batch of cuttings potted a couple of weeks ago, and another tray of Hallmark. And then there's some mixed giants in the end. These are outside. I think the forecast for here is okay for the next few days, and they really won't fit in the greenhouse. But if I was to lose them, it's no great shakes in a sense. I've got plenty more in here. If it does look cold, then I'll end up filling the path up. I've had a few cold nights, but the the tubers that I've just literally thrown out the greenhouse haven't been caught yet. They're not growing very much, but they haven't been caught. So greenhouse is filling up. Obviously you can see the ones that were potted today, which is most of those. These I had a bit more room, so I brought some of these back in, which are really the giants. So they're mostly Bryn, bless me, Bryn, Aggie, or mostly Aggie, Bryn and Louis. There's a tray of Wilhelm at the back there, and some more Marys. Most of these are Hallmark and Gertler, so I've done really well out of a few little pot tubers. And on the bench are ones that they look a bit flagging at the moment because they've literally just come out of the propagator and have been potted, and I've just put cold water over their heads, so they won't enjoy that for the next half hour. But this is the Wilhelm that were just rooted. The bench, or this is the hotbed, is still on, so still providing some base heat just to encourage a bit more rooting. Then we've got some oakwood, which I'm struggling for generally, and then these are Bryns and Aggies. I think there's 2 trays of Aggie there, so it's about 40 Aggie white potted. As you can see, Skims, Jane, Blight and Softer Gleam, and Rycroft Jill. So I was just using the heat while it's still there, just to encourage them away. And then these are the trays. You can see the thermostat still in there, that pretty much are rooted. I'm sure if I was to pull it out, it'll have a root, which it has. And they're a nice little batch of cuttings, but they've been under fleece, so I'd like to sort of just give them a week, maybe if I get time beforehand, less, before I put those into pots. And there's probably about 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 55 Marys there, some Jill and Louis. I'll take the fleece off, let them acclimatise, and also then these plants in here would have had a week just to get used to it before I move them outside, because there's 120 up there to pot, and then we've still got another 160 plus in there to also pot up at the same time. So just putting that week apart gives me a chance to rotate the space, which I don't really have to do. There's about 360 in here, there's 360 at a pot, so all of this will have to be emptied outside before I could put the next lot in here. And then it just means actually the second batch catches up with the first main batch, and you get a fairly even batch of cuttings to select from. There's far more plants than I will plant, but then at the same time I want the choice and spares for pot tubers and so on. So that's where we're at, very end of April. So the next lot is 1st of May on Monday, so the next lot will get potted at the beginning, and I'd hope I should be able to maintain most of these plants, especially those that are just potted today, for another 3 weeks, 4 weeks in these pots before planting, so I don't have to pot them on again. So see you next week. Wednesday the 3rd of May. Time to really crack on with this plot. This one's dug, ready for rake, marking out and planting. Part of that one's dug. I really need to get on with this. It's probably 2 sessions worth there, certainly with my back, to get done. Things have just got a bit behind on the plots to get some family things that needed sorting. These are only flowers after all, family and life first. when I get it done, I've got about 4 weeks before I want to think about planting, so 2 good goes at that. That's 2 Wednesdays, 1 to prep out and mark out the plot, and then start planting. So as long as I keep my Wednesdays going forward, I should be able to make it. The grass is getting a bit large on the paths, even the odd weed, but hopefully I'm going to break up digging with some strimming, so should be able to get that all done and down at the same time, hopefully. See what we can do. It's 5 to 5. Didn't expect to get it all done, and I think my back, or I'm going to regret it later with my back, but I managed to dig all this plot, all bar the first 7 foot that I'd already done last time. So it's already both plots dug. So you can see I've trimmed the grass down. Die for what's on the beds, so trimmings. So tidy, dug. A Wednesday in advance to what I was hoping for, but I'm pleased it is done. It's one thing that I don't like having in the background, that I've still got more digging to do, certainly in May. See you next time. Morning, Wednesday the 10th of May. So fortunately I did manage to get the digging done last week and survived it. So I had a good load of rain yesterday and hailstones. It's a perfect time really for me to get the fertiliser onto the plots. This is what I'm going to use again this year as usual, which is Fast Grow. It's 60 kilos there for the 2 plots, although probably 40 will go on now, 40 50, and I'll just hold some back for a little bit in the planting hole. Ground prep is very important to get the ground right in good fettle, to get the fertiliser in the ground early enough for when the plants are planted, they will then be able to access that fertiliser. There's a little bit of fine weed growth on the surface of this one, because obviously that's been dug since February, and the fresher dig, none's come up in the last week, but a little bit from the strip I did before. The biggest weed seems to be Dahlias, so the ones that are left in the ground. These would have been probably Canora Valentine, poking their heads up now, but they'll just get chopped off and worked in. So the first thing to do is to work out where my beds are actually going to be. I'll use the canes to just mark the ends of each row, so I then know when I'm walking across the plot applying the fertiliser that I'm not walking across a bed that's going to be planted in. I don't want to be getting on the soil at all, anywhere that there's a plant going in the ground. Just keep it open. So that's the first job. Normally it's 7 beds per plot. I'm going to try and squeeze in a triple row at the end of this bed, because it's not going to be covered and it won't have the windbreak on the edge, so I can actually come to the edge of the plot and access it from this side, just to get a few more poms in. It'll be just a 1 bed of poms, which just means I can get the numbers I look for on the others. 370-ish plants is what I can fit in the 2 plots. I could fit more. It'd be nice to have another plot and grow more, but pretty much 370-400 plants is my limit with the time I've got available. And we just want to grow what you grow well, not grow too many and grow them not so well, because you will not get the results growing too many plants that you can't handle and grow to the best of that plant's ability. So the sun's shining, the forecast is wet later. We'll see how much we can get done, but if I can just get the plots marked out today, that'll be ready for me to either start planting a few next week. I know it's probably a week earlier than I'd usually like to, but it'd be good to get some of the giants in the Bryn family that are generally a bit slow and are later flowering, and I've got fairly large plants of those that could do with going in the ground next week, and then I should dig holes for the rest of them in readiness the week after. So here we go. So that's just the canes roughly put into position. 14 beds, 3 rows for this one, double rows on the other. And then I get the tape measure out and I try and average out the paths between them to get the most path width as I can. Bed width, I try 24 inches between the rows and 24 inches between the plants. Varieties like Oakwood Goldcrest, I might go to 20 inches because they just don't make a big plant and don't get that many flowers, so you just get an extra 4 plants in a row or in a bed. But out with a tape measure, get them right, and then fertilizer goes on. That's the 4 bags on. Knowing it's good to have a plan of what you're going to plant in what beds, so I already know that. So some of the beds, certainly where I'm going to have the giants, I've gone heavier. So this is the giants beds, and I couldn't tell you what the rate of application is, but you can see I've put it down between there and there, same there and there. That's, I suppose, about that sort of density. So they'll want more on a kickstart for a bit longer. The beds over here, these are miniatures, all miniatures apart from a small bull and a pom, so they've had a little bit less on average. Don't really want to put too much down on them. And then this plot here, or this part of the plot here, will be just 2 beds of Winholm in the middle, so they've had a little bit more as a small deck, a little bit less on the outside edges where it's lower on the frame, for the Oakwood Goldcrest. So don't just apply everything the same for everything, because every plant isn't the same, and have your planting plan ready before you're at that stage. So now I'm just going to go through this with the 3-prong claw, move it in the rake or the hoe, whatever. It's probably the hoe on these bits first because there's some weeds, and just get it ready for actual planting. Put the string lines down and put 1 marker cane in for each plant position. So all the beds have now been hoed over. See, a lot of the weeds have disappeared and hopefully they'll dry up. Just to mix the fertiliser into the soil a bit and get a rough level, and obviously me walking up and down will define the centre of the path. Try not to walk all over the beds, and once I've found the centre, and this one is the giant frame, where I've then just put the rake over to level it out, defined the centre of the path, gone along it, levelled it, back of the rake, and a little bit of walking, and that's now a firm walkway that, as you can see, is still giving the plants coming up through this line a good 12 inches or so of root run without me walking all over it, so they're all getting the same difference. The beds are nice and flat, easy to put a string across, mark out and maintain with a hoe. They're fairly firm because they've now been worked. But when I dig, I want to plant, I plant with a spade, so I'll be taking a big hole out for the plants to go in, and that'll just loosen the soil, certainly around 8-9 inches of the root ball that's going into the ground. It's just got to do that to the rest of the beds and get the canes in. So the bed's all raked, and those canes that we put in earlier to mark the rows have now got a string going up and down them. So now it's quite an easy process of going down at 2-foot intervals and pushing the cane in the ground. So that plot's all strung out and ready. When that one's got the canes in, move the string over to this one and put string out this one. This is all raked and ready to go as well. So that's that now done. You'll see the shorter canes in some of the beds where I found them, because they're for the shorter plants, but the plan is under here would be 13 Louis White, 13 Bryn Turfel, 13 Aggie White, another 26 Aggie White, 26 Louis White. There'll be 26 Oakwood Goldcrest, correction, 16 Oakwood Goldcrest and 10 Casper in the back of this bed. These two beds here will be 26 and another 26 Winelm Diane, and then these will be Oakwood Goldcrest at the end. And you can see I've used shorter canes for the Oakwood because they only need a couple of ties and they're short growing plants, which is also why they're on the outside edges of the cover, and the Winelm Diane are in the middle two beds of the cover because there's a bit more height, otherwise they tend to hit the polythene. So just a case of winding the string up, and that bed or plot is ready for planting. And then we'll just transfer the string across to this one and put the canes in again. But that'll probably be next week's job. So the bed's all raked, and those canes that we put in earlier to mark the rows have now got a string going up and down them. So now it's quite an easy process of going down at 2 foot intervals and pushing the cane in the ground. So that plot's all strung out and ready. When that one's got the canes in, move the string over to this one and put string out this one. This is all raked and ready to go as well. Wednesday, May the 17th, another week on. Obviously we got this far last week. A weed has managed to appear, but we'll soon sort that out. And quite a few dahlias by the look of it poking up. So we're going to start planting a bit early, I know, probably a week, maybe 2 weeks early in tradition. But I think it's these plants, it's a bright and soft to glean. They're nice plants, but if they stayed in that pot for another 2 weeks, they wouldn't be nice plants. They'd be hardened up and probably pot bound. So we've got two choices really: either pot them up into 5-inch pots, which is a fairly long-winded process on 400 plants. And then you've got to dig bigger holes, you've got to plant them, more compost, more moving, or we plant them. The forecast is good for the next couple of weeks really. I don't think we're going to see any frost. I hope we don't. So I'm going for the planting option, and hopefully we can get these all in well, today and possibly tomorrow. I plant a bit differently to most, and I'll show you that later. But I don't use a trowel. I use a border spade to dig a decent sized hole, rather than just sort of wedging the plant into a 9 centimetre hole. That's more relevant because of the way I have to water and feed with watering cans and things like that. So we'll get organised, get going, and we'll show you the process. That's the holes for 4 beds dug, which is the giants, a couple of large. I sort of changed my mind and realised I was meant to be planting Oakwood Goldcrest in the first bed, and I was just doing enough for the giant, so I've done that as well. Our friendly thrush having a wonderful time with some worms that are coming out. So now all the holes are dug. Looks like it's been an attack of the moles, which is really why I can't see how you can do a no dig in full practice when you're digging these holes every 2 foot and you're digging the tubers out and the soil's moving around so much. But I'm happy with the way I do it, so I'll stick with it. It didn't take long, probably about half an hour to dig what is 100 holes. So now I've just got to put the base dressing in again, so the fertiliser and a couple of other little bits I like to creep in, and then we start putting the plants into place. That's it. So the hole's dug, stuff's in the bottom. 3 different things gone in there. I'll just place a plant by each hole where it's going to go. So far I haven't had to get on my hands and knees to do anything. which is a bonus when you've got a dodgy back. And it's now just a case of planting them. There's 4 beds down, 10 to go, but all the giants are in, and you notice that they're considerably shorter plants sticking out the ground than they were when they were standing on top of the ground, with some similar base of the plant buried under the ground, as usual for me. So there's quite a few in, but a lot more to go. Lunchtime now, so it's 2:30 on the Thursday and all done. Just got a few late comers to the party, which will be next week when they're big enough to plant, but the rest in my mind needed planting. So I'll take you through. We've got 16 Oakwood Goldcrest in there. At the end will be 10 AC Casper. There's 3 there already. This is 26 Louis White, 26 Aggie White, another 12 Aggie White, and 12 Bryn Turfel, 26 Winarm Dying, another 26 Winarm Dying, so that's 52 of those. And this will be another 26 of Oakwood Goldcrest. They're split that way because when I put the cover up and netting on this end, the Oakwood are probably the most resilient variety under here, so they'll be on the outside of either end of the cover, and the taller Winarms are obviously in the middle to give a bit more height, and the giants just tucked in a bit, so there was a sort of reason to splitting them. And then on this plot, couldn't make up my mind between Gertler Twilight and Hallmark, so I've made the spacing smaller, put a triple bed in, and ended up planting 26 of each, so 26 Hallmark and Gertler Twilight in there. Then we've got 26 Skimsdale Jane, another 12 Skimsdale to make 36, 12 Bright and Softer Gleam. Seems that everyone in Essex is growing that this year, with another 24 to make 36. And then this is a miniature cover. That cover frame won't be covered this year, so the Poms, Skimsdale and Softer Gleams will be out of cover. Apparently they don't need it. I've not grown either of the last 2. And then this will be the miniature ball cover as such. And in here we've got effectively 36 Mary's Jamander and 36 Rycroft Jill. And this will have a cover on because Jill and Mary's can lose a bit of colour later in their development. So they're all in, they're all watered, the first cane's in, slug pellets are down, and they can just get on with it. We're having quite a nice sunny day today, so let's hope we get some favourable weather this year with a bit of rain, not too hot. That'd be perfect. See you next time.